If any of you have experienced any times in your life where you are not able to speak, I mean, you can speak in some situations, but in others, your voice just completely disappears. Maybe you know somebody that's experienced this, or maybe you have. Have you ever felt like life is just being sucked out of you when you're in a crowd? Have you ever felt like you just can't keep up with a conversation and you just cannot speak when spoken to? Do you feel like a deer in headlights and go into freeze mode in uncomfortable situations? Selective mutism can be terrifying and it can be completely out of your control. I wish I had control over it when it happens, but I completely do not. When it happens, I am done. I know coming out of it is really hard. For me, losing my voice and Shutdown come together, and for me, losing my voice and being able to make sense of the world comes together. The definition from selectivemutismcenter.org states, it is a complex childhood anxiety disorder characterized by a child's inability to speak and communicate effectively in social settings such as school. These children are able to speak and communicate in settings where they are comfortable, secure, and relaxed. To this day, I do not understand why it just says children instead of children and adults, because I'm an adult. All the time, autism is associated with kids, children, and we grow up, and these symptoms, they don't disappear. So I don't really know why they do that, because I am an adult and I've had autism all of my life, and I still at times struggle with selective mutism. It states that more than 90% of children with selective mutism also have social phobia or social anxiety. When I am in certain situations where I feel uncomfortable, my voice just goes away and I want to disappear, and I can look like the life is literally being sucked out of me. I can even become white. People could think that I'm rude. Conversations are going on. I'm not participating. I might even leave the room because I just can't get myself to speak. And this is a real thing. And I have absolutely zero control over it. Well, I would say that it is safe to say that anxiety and selective mutism are hand in hand. For me, when my voice goes away, it makes me more anxious. So when your voice goes away, it causes anxiety when you have expectations that you can't fulfill, because that's exactly what's going on when you're in that situation. I'm not sure which comes first, the anxiety or the loss of voice. I would say it's circular, and it just grows through the experience. It just gets worse and worse as it goes on. People with selective mutism have an actual fear of speaking and of social interactions. I know for me, it's debilitating. I'm going to be honest, for years and years I thought the loss of my voice had to do with childhood trauma. I really never put it together with my autism that was why I was losing my voice. In hindsight, I absolutely can tell it is because that I have autism, and that because I have trauma, because people with autism can get stuck, and we can get stuck in the trauma. So it kind of is both going on at the same time with me. But I always had selective mutism, and I always had the trauma. So I would say that they go hand in hand for me. It states that many children with selective mutism have great difficulty responding or initiating communication in a nonverbal manner. I know for me that it can be so bad that I can't even move, like a deer in headlights. I've been in countless situations where I looked rude, or at a church and everyone is holding hands and singing the song, and I am the only one in the room, the only one that is not singing, and it is very embarrassing. And I know people are thinking something like, what is wrong with her? She's an adult. There's no reason why she should not be participating as an adult. But it really, the adult goes right out of me when those situations happen. I have trained and trained myself to speak in uncomfortable situations, but I can still go completely silent when I'm in a group of people where I do not feel comfortable. I just hide in a room where I'm by myself, or I go where there is one person to talk to. Now, I'm fine if one person comes and sits next to me and wants to start a conversation. That's different than being in a room full of people with a lot of conversation going on. That also goes along with all the motions and the sensory processing. The more I have to process, the quieter I become. In the next slide, it says that not all children manifest their anxiety in the same way. Some may be completely mute and unable to speak or communicate to anyone in a social setting. Others may be able to speak to a select few or perhaps whisper. Some children stand motionless with fear as they are confronted with specific social situations. They may freeze, be expressionless, unemotional, and may be socially isolated. That was me. Frozen, expressionless, unemotional looking. Like I've said, it is life sucking. Very often, the people that have this can show signs of severe anxiety, frequent tantrums, crying, moodiness, inflexibility, sleeping problems, extreme shyness, all the way from infancy on. Now, my kids are like this. My 4-year-old has pretty significant separation anxiety and shyness and tantrums when they are singing in his preschool class. He just gets some headphones and he goes and he sits by himself and he observes everything that's going on. And he has autism too. He has extreme separation anxiety with me. He makes me promise that I'm not leaving the parking lot in the morning. Now the next slide states, the fearful scenarios are social settings such as birthday parties, school, family gatherings, routine errands, etc. I can remember when I was a kid sitting on the couch in my family's living rooms and just being completely unnoticeable. And the weird thing about it is not too many people came to me. And I guess that when somebody's completely shut down, you don't look like you want somebody to come talk to you, so people don't. But actually, it's the opposite of that. I mean, I didn't, but yet it would have been very helpful for somebody to sit next to me, just start a conversation, try to gradually get me out of not being able to speak. It really would have made a difference. The next slide states that some children have difficulty modulating sensory input, which may affect their emotional responses. This may cause a child or adult to misinterpret environmental and social cues. This can lead to inflexibility, frustration, and anxiety. This anxiety experience may cause a child to shut down, avoid, and withdraw from a situation, or it may cause him or her to act out, have tantrums, and manifest negative behaviors. Now, they do talk about what I was talking about earlier, the difference between selective mutism and traumatic mutism. In the next slide, it says, children who suffer from selective mutism speak in at least one setting and are rarely mute in all settings. Children with traumatic mutism usually develop mutism suddenly in all situations. I know for me that I could speak in a lot of situations. It really depended on the people, the places, the things, my mindset, because there's times that I should be able to talk to people that I normally would be able to, and I'm just not able to. My mind is done, and the voice goes. There's scenarios when I walk into a new situation, or like I said earlier, a lot of people, I'm just not going to be able to do that. I just can't perform. And that is really what it is. It's like my life is on a stage most of the time. And it's like, am I able to perform or am I not able to perform? And lots of times I'm just not. Now, when it comes to the difference between selective mutism and trauma, those who know we can't speak and can't find a voice can take advantage of us and hurt us in varying ways. believing we will not tell anyone. So we are very susceptible to having people bully us, abuse us, taking advantage of us, because they can do and say whatever they want. And they know that pretty much we aren't going to be able to stand up for ourselves and tell other people. The other thing about this, which maybe people don't even think about, but when you take their situation versus our situation and what they're saying and what we're saying, they're going the person who did it is going to look a lot more believable, because they look confident. They have a lot of words, and you know, they're very adamant in how they're speaking, as if, no, I didn't do that. I know I would never do those things if we found the voice enough to tell. But we, on the other hand, come across quiet, timid, almost looking as if maybe we have a lot of issues to begin with, so we probably might not even be telling the truth. So why should you believe us anyway? Because we've got issues. I mean, look at you. You really aren't able to speak when you're asked to. You look as if you really can't defend yourself. That's a whole nother video, another time. Let's go to the next slide. It is important to realize that the majority of children with selective mutism are as normal and as socially appropriate as any other child when in a comfortable environment. Parents will often comment how boisterous, social, funny, inquisitive, extremely verbal, and even bossy and stubborn these children are at home. And I know that for me, I was like the funniest person when I was growing up, when I was around people I felt comfortable with. I had a lot of fun. But then there were other people that probably would have looked at me now and said, no, she never talked. She wasn't funny. She was the quietest one in the room. So it really did depend. So for people who knew me growing up, there could be 10 people that knew me in various situations, and they would describe me in 10 varying different ways. A little bit ago, I mentioned about my life being on a stage. And right here, I love this slide. Some children with selective mutism feel as though they are on stage every minute of the day. I can really relate to that. Okay, the next slide. Many have stiff or awkward body language when in a social setting and seem very uncomfortable or unhappy. Now, I'm not an unhappy person. That's not how I would describe myself. I would describe it as if the life is just being sucked out of me. And when you feel like you've got like this vacuum cleaner attached to you and it's literally just pulling every ounce that you have left, it can look like you're depressed, but it's situational. It really is the feeling of feeling miserable more than depressed. One of the other things I want to cover is sensory integration dysfunction, processing difficulties, and delays. I have all of this, and I think that this all goes hand in hand with selective mutism. This is the reason for Shutdown with me and my mutism. So in larger, crowded environments where there's multiple stimuli are present, such as classroom settings, where the child feels an expectation, sensory modulation, specifically sensory defensiveness, exists. Anxiety is created, causing a freeze mode to take place. The ultimate freeze mode is mutism. I lived the majority of my growing up years in Shutdown, and I can tell you that it is awful, and people can really take advantage of you, like I spoke of before. It can get as bad as in the communication, as not being able to even point or nod, respond to a teacher for a question, maybe even an easy question that you might know the answer to. So, I mean, it can be, like I said earlier, completely debilitating. Many of us are just not able to socially engage properly, so it just causes us to go down more and more and more into more shutdown as everybody else around you is interacting more and more. And the more that they are having a good time and the more that they're being able to find their voice, the more we are losing ours. One of the things that I would do in a lot of the situations that I was in was shadow people. I would find somebody, even as an adult, a young adult especially. I would just find somebody or go with somebody to events, and I would just shadow them. I would just go behind them, and everywhere we went, let them be the voice, the ears, the eyes, follow their cues, and maybe at some point they can help me be able to find my voice for me to be able to talk to other people in the room. But I mean, it really does get me through. I still do it to this day. Of course, the other piece to this is self-esteem. You don't feel very positive about yourself when you're like this. So it can be very hindering to our ability to come out of being shut down. We are people with autism, and I can only speak for myself, but we get hooked on these definitions of what's going on with us in the room and allow our inabilities to take us down, take me down more and more, and it can really create a situation where really the best possible scenario is for me to just leave and just go home, do what I need to come out of it, take time, and maybe go and try that situation again, more prepared since I have done it once before, and go with a script in my mind, go with certain people that I can go to directly to have a conversation, have those conversations laid out in my mind, and then I can try to get myself back on track. Now, sometimes the script goes off and it kind of throws me off, and being able to come back to that sometimes can be a little hard, but that can definitely help going into situations already prepared for any and all scenarios, conversations, and what you can do in order to stay in the conversation. Now, I do want to end with saying that I did cover this under selective mutism, which does fall under autism, and sensory processing falls under autism. So, I mean, lots of times doctors want to say, oh, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, and it falls all under the umbrella of autism. Well, if you've got all of these things, I would say you probably might want to go get re-diagnosed and have them really look at autism instead of all these little diagnoses, and put them all together and just call it what it is. Just call it autism. Anyway, thanks for sticking with this. This was a little bit more serious than some of the things that I've covered. This was a little bit more mellow, I guess. But this is, there's so many topics when it comes to autism, and I would like to cover them all. So again, as my kids say,
maybe Sarah can
ready?
Tomorrow.
1, 2, 3. Smash that like button.
And if you could subscribe, hit the bell, share, let people know about this, and let's do this together. I got 3 with autism, and I have autism, so I have all angles here. So hopefully we can learn a little bit together with this. And as I always say, keep being you and keep moving forward. Bye.